Hi everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Alen Pelin. I spent 10 years supporting enterprise Sitelify solutions. Recording. And now I work at Altola as a platform architect, and we are chasing enterprise deployment issues. So many companies, so many huge enterprises, they suffer from exactly the same diseases or issues or reasons to fail at scale. They often very hard and expensive to actually deliver the content created by huge teams with tens or hundreds people with lots of approvals, and in the end, the whole budgets of the content created, it's just not worth it because of the enormous costs in all aspects. It also the growing complexity, which, well, as most of you probably know, with Cycle and other enterprise systems, it's not shrinks, it expands. Every new version brings something new features and new obstacles, new complications, new roles to support, new settings, new limitations, etc. Most of these CMS, niche CMS systems, they have own presentation technologies. Like Sitecore always had own API for MVC, then it brought GSS with lots of, again, APIs, and basically it's a right move, but still it a lot of things to learn, especially if you already invested in previous generations for previous technologies. And we believe for other CMSs and other enterprise systems, it's the same. It is very hard for business to actually find and retain talents, those people who are skilled and who will to invest their time in learning new versions, new presentation techniques, and maintain website. And most of all, it's poor performance, as I already mentioned. Like most CMS systems, they are not designed for really good performance. Lots of them deliver over 3 seconds per request, which is like a way over the world where sub-second performance is expected, especially these days. And performance also a business problem now. So in July 2018, Google Search started ranking slow sites down, which basically was costly, very costly for business, because they had either to invest lots of money to make their systems faster, or to buy buy ads to be like #1 in Google search results. And these days, Google also considers to strike again, to actually update the Google Chrome, the most popular browser on earth, to warn users about about performance of the site they are trying to navigate. So when loading the page, they'll suggest that usually site loads slow. Lots of people will just press back and choose something faster. And it's not a new problem. And last year I was already presenting the thing called Sitelify, and back then we offered a partial solution to some of these problems for GSS applications. Sitecore GSS ones, we were offering the software to deploy actually these applications to Netlify CDN for performance and reducing costs of running cluster or content delivery instances. It was first module to unlock Jamstack for Sitecore. But what exactly is Jamstack? Well, despite it's called stack, it's not a stack of technologies. It's a concept that certain companies, certain technologies support. It's universal JavaScript, APIs, and pre-built markup, which means, well, in most cases, it's a static site generator, like Gatsby or Next.js, which is fed with data from JSON files or from your database or other systems. And it uses for dynamics on the page. It is supposed to have, well, Ajax talking to some kind of service. It doesn't matter if it's your service and you maintain it yourself, or if it's a third-party one. It matters that the page itself, the base HTML which is loaded to browser, it's static for all or nearly all pages. And to describe why we are thinking it's a thing, it started, I think, in 2018 or earlier. And first it was utilized mostly for small projects like blogs or like small websites where it's proven its success for this area. But these days it's lots of companies develop their current web systems, including Microsoft, who is serving 40 million of their documentation pages through Jamstack. So that's why we built Uniform. We decided that we need to offer something more than JSS deployed to Netlify CDN. So we decided to add support of earlier versions of Sitecore, including 8 and maybe a little bit earlier if required actually, where JSS is not available, simply not available by Sitecore. Also, if the client needs to have Sitecore 8 upgraded, they need to build a business case and to upgrade it to 9 and rebuild with JSS. Sometimes it's too expensive. Sometimes in terms of just funds and money, sometimes it's both money and time is precious. Additional thing that we were bringing here, we decouple personalization. Sitecore personalization is decoupled from Sitecore these days. So basically, it can scale without servers. Sitelify version 1, it still run personalization on Sitecore servers. So if you had like 100 pages and 3 of them had presentation, you had to maintain at least 2 CD servers just to run this presentation, this personalization. So we eliminated this. We started extracting information from Sitecore about personalization rules and running it closer to a client. We support CDNs like Akamai. So Akamai can run personalization rule and return the modified HTML to the client with exactly the same URL. It can be edge workers at Cloudflare, which mostly the same thing, but written in different using different technology, and in the browser as a baseline. So we can run JavaScript rules just in browser after the page is loaded. Also, we realized that Netlify is not, well, it's great, but it's not for all companies. Large enterprises, they are very skeptical, very skeptical in terms of new modern CDNs. And for these cases, we added support of Amazon, Azure, and Akamai. And basically any CDN that can store content, that store HTML, and then deliver it to the client. And also, we added support of multiple content sources. So multiple CMS. You can mix 2 Sitecore systems, 2 different Sitecore installations. You can mix contentful and gather content. These are 3 CMS that we support at the moment, and a few are going to be added later this year. So how Uniform works? So it takes the content, and content means the pieces of content, which is not the whole page itself. It can be, in terms of Sitecore, it could be data source. And in terms of like contentful and gather content, it could be just a document. It can be the full page, which comes from Sitecore with already plugged all components, all data sources, everything at once. It applies personalization rule personalization rules on the top of it, and then runs one of the three static site generators that we support: Gatsby, Next.js, and Next, which is a port of Next.js for view rendering engine. After and basically the output of the static site generator is uploaded to the hosting system. And in browser, we still support, thanks to these static site generators and React and Vue kind technologies. It supports SPA. So basically, this HTML, original HTML, the document, it gets loaded just once, and after it, normal client, like nearly instant client-side navigation. Last year, we received a lot of feedback regarding version 1, and most commonly asked was, do I have to rebuild my front end in JavaScript? Because there are so many talented backend developers or front-end developers that don't like, for some reason, the JavaScript. Or sometimes it's just a huge code base. It could be a huge website with lots of efforts invested. So last year it was not possible. Today I say no. In addition to GSS and pure React and Vue rendering engines, we support ASP.NET MVC, sidecar flavor of MVC. So, and this is our use case number 1. So we can take existing sidecar 8.2 plus site, or sometimes even earlier version. It can be fine. Like, lots of them are live, lots of them are fine. Just most of them lack some front-end performance, which was not a thing back then. These days it's getting more and more important. Sometimes some of them require additional facelift, and often when you have your website and some facelift is required, lots of people will think, oh, we need to rebuild using this super cool technology. Well, we're saying that it's not the only way. You still can mix old website with uniform. You can have all your pages in MVC and start replacing or adding new pages in React as if they were like the same class citizens. Use case number 2 is new sidecar projects that want to utilize Jamstack. And in this story, we can offer both GSS and basically pure React if the use of GSS is not possible because of their licensing or because of the lack of skills. And it will offer the same level of performance because in the end it will be exactly the same React application that is delivered to the client. And the last use case, it's existing GSS projects that need extra performance boost. And for them, we can also provide the same level of functionality. You can still generate static site from it and run personalization, everything, without a cluster of content delivery nodes. And just to show you that it's not a fairy tale, let me demo one of the, well, it's not my favorite version of site-by-site. It's called Habitat, for those who are not familiar. It was always claimed as an sample site for Helix principles. It was never designed to be a starter kit, and it was destined to be a starter kit for most websites. The level of efforts for most of the websites, and I'm saying most of the websites, it's meaning where the most or all the content is static. Basically all site visitors are receiving exactly the same data. It's almost 0. The only thing you need to re-implement these days is just base layout. So the base view, which I'm showing at the moment, just a few lines with placeholders and a few classes on body. You need to re-implement in React as a layout component, which looks exactly the same, with the same placeholders, with the same structure. No, well, it's a no-brainer, basically. In addition to this change in code, you also need to create a custom config file with a few variables to connect to your, in this case, local instance of Uniform, which will be hosted at localhost 3000, and also put the public URL for the website, which will be delivered, which the Uniform will deploy to. From the Node.js part, or basically the front end, we have very small starter kit with only 2 required dependencies, which is our own Uniform libraries. And we need to create the placeholder. So basically, this is the index of all React components that will be used in the solution. Very similar to what we have in JavaScript, sorry, in Cycle.js. We need to add a placeholder that will be rendering all the other components, including MVC ones. Just running yarn start. By the way, there is an environment file which needed to be created. It's relatively simple, just defining the port, the site URL, and the site URL that will be used. There's site name in terms of site per sites, if it's a multi-site solution. And there are like 2 main modes of Uniform. It could be publish and it could be preview. And let me explain the preview. The preview needed when you add the JavaScript renderings to your existing MVC site, because Sidecar cannot render them. If you start adding the JavaScript renderings to your site, you won't be able to see them in Experience Editor and in Preview. So this is why you need a preview mode, like as a separate hosted site. The most important one is a publish, and you can configure it like how many threads, how many concurrent pages it can generate, and so on. Because this is fairly lightweight laptop, I won't bother to set in more than 2, just not to fry it. And the code name for this MVC support feature was magic button, because you simply press it and it simply works. And you don't see all the details, how it's implemented and all the requirements. Let me open first the Netlify. It is still the CDN of reference for us. And we're using, and I'm using it in this demo because of the simplicity how to configure it. Basically, you just drop in the API token and that's it. The site is created automatically for you on the first attempt. So all the magic is bound to the end of site publish process. So content authors, they won't even know if you change it. If you switch to Uniform in the solution. And again, the same simple rule: if publish succeeded, it means it's live. If it fails, you will see it fail. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully it never fails. We can see here it's outputting a lot of debugging information, but basically at the moment it finished creating the HTML files and already uploading it to the cloud. And it's done. If we refresh the page, It's already deployed, just with some random site name. Let's rename it to something. Here we go. Habitat 2020. Done. And
so now this environment is open to your local instance?
it's for everybody. Like, you can open it on your phone. I can switch off my Sitecore instance and it will be still working in production, running personalization and doing everything. The second thing I'm showing here with Habitat, I will show how we can extend it with React component, which I pre-created, and we'll show the preview mode of it. So let me go to layout, renderings, and just add controller rendering. Java, hello world. And controller is JavaScript rendering. Done. Let me show you the code of the rendering. Pretty straightforward. It's just a label, the div with current date. Okay, let's have a look. Starting in preview mode. Hello world. If we open the same page in pure Habitat, in pure Sitecore, the component will be missing. Well, we may be able to add this mixed mode for Sitecore itself, so we don't have to run preview separately. For now, it's a requirement. Okay, this was demo number 1. Demo number 2 is our own website. Yeah.
So you were demonstrating 3 versions of the same site. One site that was fully pre-rendered and served by Netlify.
Yes.
Another one that was your preview.
Yeah.
One was localized.
Yes.
And then there is the standard
Sitecore.
current version.
Yeah.
An active version.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
And just to add to that, the preview version, is it also kind of the same like Identifier?
It's exactly the same.
Static.
Yes,
Files, yeah.
it's not static. It's these pages are generated in runtime when you request it. It basically lets you preview the changes that you made in master database without republishing everything to Netlify to make sure it's exactly the same. So it's exactly the same rendering. It's just on demand for a specific page.
So how is it that personalization
There are several stories. So just personalization itself, it can run without XDB at all. If using client-side JavaScript tracker, basically the default option is what we are doing when you, as a client, navigate the website. All the history, like what you usually store in XDB, it's stored in the browser itself, in the local storage. So the full history of your visitor is stored locally in your device. And the Sitecore rules that you define in personalization in in Sitecore, we developed the same rules in JavaScript. So we are basically mapping C# rules with JavaScript rules, and these JavaScript rules they run in the browser itself. So imagine there is a home page and it has banner, and this banner is being hidden if you already visited some By Me page. So when visitor comes to the page, it's recorded that the visitor saw the home page. He visits or she visits the special page. This page is saved to the local storage, and when the user goes back to the home page, it checks if you visited this page and hides this from presentation.
So it exposes all the personalization rules.
Right, right.
Which isn't really secure in a way, right?
Right, you're absolutely right. Not for all. For some cases, it should be all right. If it's not like a huge company which is paranoid, a lot of them I know. We offer solution for this. Instead of running this in browser, we can run it on the edge.
Oh, great.
So by Akamai, by Cloudflare, and other CDNs that implement ESI. Yep.
So it just does basically the skin session personalization run, so it doesn't actually do the personalization based on
Baseline, yeah.
historical data.
If this is your only device, it supports. It keeps track of all the times you visited the site using this browser, unless you went and manually cleared the history. This is baseline. We have an option to synchronize it with, I don't remember, one of the cloud databases. So you can configure flushing these to the storage. But in this case, you'll have to write some custom code how to identify the visitor.
So in a case where it's doing this personalization edge worker, and you sync your personalization rules to the edge worker, how does the edge worker understand the client state? Does it require like hosting and maintaining the client state to the edge worker for every request?
I think it uses HTTP headers that is sent by the client, and these headers should contain the identifier, as far as I remember.
But the edge worker doesn't assist state, so the question is around the state management. I can understand the limits on local storage, but does it mean hosting that local storage to the edge worker?
If you're using Edge Worker, of course you won't have access to local storage. In this case, I think it is mandatory to submit this data to the third-party service, or your own storage, and use this storage in the workers. I don't know the details of this implementation. If you're interested, I can connect you with Alex, who developed this.
Does that mean that you need to use universal trackable to flush all the candidates back to HTTP?
Yes. It's in beta, but it's there. Okay. Let me switch to another demo. Let me stop the habitat, save some resources. By the way, this is SIM 1.6 developed by Canadian team, and they added support of 9, like using proper SIF. I'm proud. Yeah, and I'm so proud they didn't abandon it, but instead took over and grow. Okay, so this is our own website, and it is Sitecore 8, and it combines the pages created specifically in Sitecore with blogs, with blog pages, blog posts that are hosted in Contentful. So this one is wildcard. This is how we map the data. show you the content there. Here are posts, Jamstack for Enterprise, for example. And for mixing content from 2 or more sources, we have a special source called API or content mixer. Content mixer is a kind of proxy in terms of building the website tree. Just like in Sitecore, you have tree of pages which are mixed with data sources and extra data. It is exactly the same but without data sources. It just has pages and folders. So if there should be baseline, the base provider. In our case, it's Sitecore. Let me show you this one. The root provider is Sitecore, which means let's take all Sitecore pages, which it has, and which is configured for the specific site name, and inject thinking, eject all the blog posts. Let me show you. Yeah, here is a query. So query all blog posts from Contentful and inject as direct children of thinking item. There was a little bit, I don't know how to name it properly, but confusion, or it's a little bit more difficult because Contentful does not have presentation details. They have nothing to do with what page layout is, what presentation details like personalization, ABC, anything. It's just pure items, even without structure. That's why in our own case, we developed the site in Sitecore. It's just injecting certain children to certain leaves of the tree. And all the presentation is still stored in Sitecore. If we go to this wildcard item, this is the reason why it's there. We have presentation for blog posts over here, but the data comes directly from Contentful. Also, if you're familiar or a little bit familiar with cloud CMSs, they often provide field values not as strings as Sitecore, but as JSON objects. Sometimes they are very complicated, large, contain extra data, extra information that you don't actually need to expose into the front end. And for this case, we have on the same level in Content Mixer, we have rules. So basically, we sanitize the output from Contentful. For example, there is a title image. Well, it's a JSON object with source, dimensions of the image, everything, and we just remain URL as a single value. So we are converting the JSON object into URL. And the front-end developer who develops the website, this person doesn't know if it's coming from Sitecore or if it's coming from Contentful or what the data structure there. The front-end developer knows the schema of this JSON document. That's it. And we have decoupled mode, so which is similar to GSS, where you can actually have these JSON files pre-populated by backend developer, and front-end developer can run the website locally without running Sitecore or connecting to internet to get some content from Contentful. So let me run this for you. So here we see two separate apps running in the same console. Which one is API, which is Content Mixer, and another is exactly the same preview mode demoed earlier today. I just realized that the same way as we mixed MVC, the whole MVC site with just single JavaScript rendering, we could probably do the reverse. We can probably take the GSS, build GSS application and insert a few backend pages, backend controllers just to the JavaScript document, to the front end. So here we go, the local version of the site with content from Contentful. Thank you. So we measured some performance of the few clients we've got, and one of them was the huge ASP.NET MVC application with time to first byte, average, over 4 seconds. We reduced it to 50, almost 100 times less for personalized content. For simple page without personalization, it's a little bit more humble, but still very, very noticeable. The most recent client is Clapier, which is one of the largest European malls provider. They have 90 pages. They have 90 small sites, about 120 pages each, and it takes 30 minutes to republish them all to the cloud from the scratch. If it's incremental update, it's even smaller, even faster than this, way faster, like 2 to 3 minutes. It's a good question, and no, in general case, we can't figure out if this modification of an item affected all site or not. So this incremental update is optional, and you can enable it if you follow this good practice of putting all the data sources as children in the folder of the page. So in this case, you can enable the incremental mode, because as you know, you never know. We also have the smart mode, which basically, that's probably easier to show, which basically is a combination of incremental and full site publish, because if you basically, there is another problem with old Sitecore MVC sites. If the website is quite slow, like if it takes 10 seconds, and we have a client who had 10 seconds per page, publishing 1,000 pages, you can multiply 1,000 to 10 seconds. This will be like an overall time of the publish of the whole site. So what we developed, we store the extracted HTML from these controllers. We store it as a JSON document, upload it to Azure Blob Storage, and we also name it with revision. So we embed revision into the file name, and we never regenerate the same page if it wasn't modified. So this helps with very, very big websites. However, as you outlined correctly, we never know if it's poorly written and has unobvious dependencies. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, or if you want a demo, or maybe you have like a site you want to try to run this thing on, please let us know or get in touch. I'm based in Melbourne, can meet you in person. Thank you.